Hey guys, my name's Alisha and welcome to my channel. So this video is going to be my September TBR. Now I did a horrible job of actually sticking to my TBR in August, but I'm hoping I do better this month. I really tried to pick books that I am excited to read, so I'm hoping that helps. But let's get into it. Here are the books. So starting off, I have The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. So I have heard a lot of great things about this book, and I really do like this author. I read Sky Hunter by Marie Lu, and I loved it, and I know so many people love her writing and love her books, and especially this book. I don't know much about the book, but I do know that it is basically this reimagining of Mozart's brother, and I mean, it's a reimagining of Mozart's sister, who obviously in history we know nothing, barely nothing about, because Wolfgang Mozart is the one who became famous and that we know about in our history. And there are fantasy and magical elements in this book as well. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Marie Lu kind of weaves those two things together, because this is a historical fantasy. But I'm really excited about this book. I also just love the cover, so can't wait to read this one. Then next I have A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. So this is the second book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. I read the first book in August, and I did really like it. I was really fascinated by the world and the magical system as well as the characters, so I'm definitely excited about continuing it. I went ahead and bought the exclusive editions, even though I definitely gave that first book I think 3 stars or 3.5 stars, so I'm hoping I like the rest of the series more, and I have heard that the series gets better as you go along. But basically this world is about a guy named Kel who, there's basically 4 different Londons. It's like alternate worlds of Londons. So there's a red London, gray, white, and black, and so each London has its own kind of magic system. So I think gray London is supposed to be like our world, kind of, where magic very rarely exists and it's only with specific people. And then there's red London, where the main character is from, named Kel, who can go between worlds. He can go through the different Londons and nobody else can. And then he is actually a smuggler, so he takes objects within Londons, and he's not allowed to be doing that. So one day he ends up kind of be getting forced into smuggling this specific object to a different London, and that object is very dangerous and puts him in a really dangerous position. And so now he meets a girl named Delilah, and they both have to kind of run away from people who are after them and are after the object that he smuggled by accident. And yeah, so I think the first book definitely ended on a really interesting note, so I'm excited to see where the series goes and continue to get into this world. And next I have a YA contemporary book called Frankly in Love by David Yoon. So this book is kind of old. I think it came out in 2018, and I don't know much about it. I just know that it's a YA contemporary, bit of a romance. So yeah, this book is about 2 Korean American kids, and they basically end up getting themselves into this fake dating situation because they both are dating people who are not Korean, and so they know their parents aren't going to approve of them, so they decide to date each other. And through that they kind of, I guess, fall in love and figure things out. But I haven't actually read a kind of easy, fluffy YA contemporary in a while, so I am really excited to read this. And this book is actually really pretty. It has these really nice sprayed edges with this navy blue, so yeah, another reason to read this book. Then I have The Hazel Wood by Melissa Albert. So another just gorgeous cover, but this book I have had on my shelves for a while and I haven't read, so I really need to get to it. And I actually have started this when I'm filming this, and so far I'm really loving it. But basically it is about this young girl who, her and her mom have been moving around a lot in their lives, and they end up in different places, but bad luck kind of is always following them, so they always end up being forced to move to a different city. And the girl's grandmother was this really famous author who wrote these series of short stories that were kind of fairy tale inspired, and so she's now passed away, the grandmother, but her stories are really famous and a lot of people love them and have read them and have heard of them. And suddenly she realizes that the like characters from those fairy tales are actually showing up in the real world and might be after her. And so the kind of place that her grandmother based these fairy tales on is known as the Hazel Wood. And so that whole, like, people don't really know where the idea of these characters came from or how her grandmother came up with writing these characters, but there's this big mystery around what the Hazelwood is. And there's the I think it was called the Tales of Hinterland, I think. So that was the actual book that the grandmother had wrote. So yeah, right now it's definitely really interesting. It's really fast paced and I am really liking it. So I'm hoping it stays at that level. Then next I have one of my most anticipated releases of 2021, as well as a book from my favorite author, and that is Velvet Was the Night by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. So I have read 3 books from this author and I've absolutely loved 2 of them, and kind of like the third one, but I love her writing style. I love the way that she writes her characters, and I love the fact that actually all of her books are so different. Like, there's not one book you'll pick up from her and, you know, have similar ideas or similar plots or even similar characters. Like, they're all just really unique and great in their own way. But of course, it's the author who wrote Mexican Gothic. She also wrote Gods of Jade and Shadow and The Beautiful Ones. So I have read all 3 of those. And one of my favorite books of all time is Gods of Jade and Shadow, and one of the main reasons that I love this author. But so this is her new release. And again, I don't really know much about it, but basically I think it is a neo-noir book. So it is a historical book. It kind of takes elements of that noir kind of setting, which I think is really cool. I love seeing that in like films and stuff, and I think it's a bit of a mystery. Yeah, don't know much about the plot, but the little blurb here is 1970s Mexico City. Métis is a secretary who lives for one thing, the latest issue of Secret Romance. While student protests and political unrest consume the city, Métis escapes into stories of passion and danger. Her next-door neighbor, Leonora, a beautiful art student, seems to live a life of intrigue and romance that Métis envies. When Leonora disappears under suspicious circumstances, Métis finds herself searching for the missing woman and journeying deeper into Leonora's secret life of student radicals and descendants. So that's a bit of the blurb, but yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I have a feeling I am really gonna love it, so I'm hoping that stays true. So then next I have a romance selection, and that is the Bromance Book Club by Alisha K. Adams. So over the last couple of months, I've definitely been in a big romance reading mood, and I've been reading a lot of romance books. And I found a few that I've really loved, but I don't know if I'm just like hard to please when it comes to romance books, but a lot of like popular ones I haven't really loved, such as Beach Read and The Hating Game and books like that. So I'm hoping to continue to read romance books and find more that I really actually love. And so I've heard a lot of great things about this book. I feel like it's a bit of a different twist on a normal romance book because I think this is from a male perspective. So we have this guy who is kind of going, like, his marriage is taking going through some problems because his wife isn't really feeling, I guess, like, she's not really feeling the love, she's not getting attention, things like that. And so the main character, who I think is a famous person, yeah, he's a baseballer, and so he kind of joins forces with these other kind of famous guys who are like athletes and things like that, and they start this book club where they're going to try to, I guess, learn through a book how to woo a woman and like fix his marriage and stuff like that. So yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about this book, and I'm definitely really excited to see if it lives up to the hype. So next up I have another YA contemporary, and that is The Marvelous Mirza Girls by Sheba Kareem. So this is a new release of 2021, and I really haven't heard much about it like in the book community, but I have had it on my radar for a little while, and I am really excited to read about it. But it basically, I don't know much about what it's about, but it says the Mirza girls hit Delhi. That's a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. And what I do think, it's about a young girl whose aunt suddenly dies, and she decides to go to New Delhi, which is in India, and hope, like, I guess trying to deal with her grief and you know, the loss of her aunt and stuff like that. She's hoping that this trip is going to kind of revitalize her life. So I think it's definitely going to be like a coming of age you know, book like that, like a YA contemporary with some hard hitting issues. But it's basically about this young girl going to India, kind of finding her identity and you know, what she wants out of life, and dealing with grief and issues like that, as well as maybe finding love and friendship and all that good stuff. So yeah, I haven't heard a lot about this book, but I'm definitely excited about reading it and hoping that it is actually good. And then next I have another actually really popular book, and that is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. So this, of course, I think a lot of people have heard of it and know about it, and it is a high fantasy adult book, and it takes, I think it is set in like a Middle Eastern inspired world. So you know, diversity, representation, we love to see it. And another book I don't really know much about in terms of the plot. So actually, okay, so this book takes place in Cairo, Egypt, and I don't know if it's you know, our world with magic, or a whole different world or something, but basically it's about a girl who is a con woman, and she ends up on a con job accidentally calling upon this jinn who is like a spirit, and then I guess together they're gonna have to flee Cairo and deal with the consequences of their actions. But yeah, I don't know much in terms of the plot. I just know that a lot of people love this book, and I am really excited to see the kind of setting and the Middle Eastern, South Asian inspired world and all of that stuff. And yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about this book. It is really long, so I'm hoping it is interesting and holds my attention, because I don't want to get into a reading slump. But I have high hopes for this. Lastly, I have two books that I don't physically own. The first is Night Swim by Megan Golden, I believe, and this is a adult thriller. I don't know much in terms of the plot. I think it has to do with a girl who, like, is the host of a podcast about true crime, and then in this town that she's in, there's like a murder or something, and now she's trying to solve that. I could be totally wrong, but I have also really been reading a lot of thrillers and wanting to get more into that genre, because honestly, before, I participated in Summer Read this year for the first time, and before that I didn't really read a lot of thrillers, but I do love that genre in general, because I, you know, watch a lot of TV shows and movies and things that are like thrillers and horror and stuff like that. So I've definitely been trying to read more in this genre, and I guess I'm going through like more of the popular books and seeing that I actually like them. But yeah, definitely excited to read this one. And then lastly, I am reading The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. So this is the third book in the romance series, starting with The Kiss Quotient and The Bride Test. So I read both those books this year, absolutely loved them. Honestly, that series might be one of my favorite romance series ever. I just feel like there's something about the way Helen Huang writes her characters and the romances, and you know, the chemistry is just so fun and so relatable to read about. So absolutely love them. This third book is about, I believe, Kwan, who was Michael's cousin from the first book and Kai's brother from the second book. But it's about him, and I'm really excited to read from his perspective, because in the first two books he definitely came across as a very you know, like a player type, and like got a lot of girls, like very bad boy type situation. But I'm excited to see how Helen Huang kind of humanizes him. Like, I feel like he wasn't the most likable character in the first two books, so excited for that. And I think this book comes out on August 31st, so preliminary reviews I've heard are pretty good. And I actually, like, I love The Kiss Quotient, and I actually love The Bride Test more than Kiss Quotient, I feel, which I feel like is a unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people didn't like The Bride Test, or didn't like it as much. So I'm hoping, you know, The Heart Principle goes in the same trajectory.